This is Mick, the Doctor of Digital.
And welcome to Love Letters. Love Letters are a collection of love stories of people get lost, get crazy, and disoriented in the name of love. Another week, another great episode. Men are lost. Fatherhood might just be the way out.
Yes, I think we could say men are struggling with purpose, identity, and mental health. What if the answer isn't self, but self offering? This is the radical countercultural case for fatherhood.
Definitely. So let's start here, Mr. Mick. What's going on with men today? What's the problem we're seeing?
We're exploring what's broken in modern culture and how to fix it. Today's episode is a reaction to an article from the Institute of Family Studies by Jim Dalrymple II. Men are in trouble. Maybe fatherhood and bigger families are a solution. As we comment on love, culture, family, and the digital age, this is going to be a deep dive into one of the most uncomfortable truths of our time and a solution that might sound radical, but is actually ancient wisdom. It's undeniable. You look around and every metric we have, whether it's declining marriage rates, collapsing birth rates, skyrocketing male loneliness, they all tell the same story. Men are in crisis. But here's the strange thing in all the noise: the manosphere, the hustle culture influencers, the dating market collapse. Almost nobody is asking whether the answer might be a radical solution for today, something humans have known for millennia. That answer is fatherhood, and perhaps the even more radical idea of bigger families. We built a culture that prizes autonomy, self optimization, and personal branding. Every social media algorithm feeds you content about becoming the best version of yourself. The entire economy of male self help is built around this idea that you need to level up your physique, your income, your status, your game. But the numbers tell a brutal truth. Loneliness is at historic highs. Male friendships are disappearing. Marriage is in free fall. Birth rates are collapsing worldwide. It's not an accident. It's the inevitable consequence of a society that told men that commitment was optional and that self actualization was the highest good. But what if the real solution isn't another self improvement hack, but a total reorientation towards love, legacy, and producing children? What if the answer isn't looking inward, but looking outward? What if the cure for male meaninglessness isn't more freedom, but more responsibility? That's a provocative framing. In conclusion, let's dig into the data that supports this.
Mr. Mick, so when you talk about this crisis, what are the numbers actually saying?
The data is sobering. In the United States, the birth rate is at 1.62, well below the 2.1 replacement level. That's civilizational decline math. We're not replacing ourselves. Marriage, lowest it's ever been in recorded American history. 28 marriages per 1,000 unmarried women. For context, in 1970, that number was 76. We're talking about a collapse, not a decline. And male loneliness, it's exploding. A survey center on American Life study showed that 15% of men have zero close friends. In 1990, that number was just 3%. Think about it. 1 in 6 men have nobody to call in a crisis. The dating and love market is broken. Algorithms gamify attraction into endless swiping, where a small number of men monopolize matches while the majority experience chronic rejection or disengagement. The top 10% of men on dating apps receive 60% of the matches. The bottom 50% get almost nothing. But here's what's even more telling: suicide rates among men are 3 to 4 times higher than women. Male depression and anxiety are skyrocketing. Testosterone levels have been declining for decades, not because of some biological shift, but because of lifestyle and psychological factors. This isn't just a cultural drift, it's a structural collapse. In conclusion, we've created a system that fundamentally works against male flourishing.
Those numbers are staggering, Mr. Mick, but you're arguing that fatherhood is a hidden antidote. Wow, and how?
Well, because fatherhood does something that nothing else can do for the male psyche. It fundamentally reorients a man's life away from the self and towards the other. There's overwhelming psychological data to back this up. A 2019 Journal of Marriage and the Family study showed that men experience a measurable uptick in happiness, well being, and life satisfaction when they become fathers, particularly when they're actively involved. A 2023 study in psychological science found that parenthood directly increases a person's sense of meaning in life. This isn't just correlation. The researchers controlled for income, education, and relationship satisfaction. But the data tells only part of the story. The deeper truth is anthropological and psychological. Men, more than women, tend to structure their identity around usefulness, contribution, and purpose. When those things collapse, as they do in a culture that prizes only individual freedom, men drift into despair. Think about it in this way: in every other area of life, you can quit. Your job, you can quit. Your hobbies, you can quit. Your friendships, they naturally fade. Your romantic relationships, half of marriages end in divorce. But fatherhood, you can't quit being a father. Even if you're a terrible father, even if you abandon your children, you're still their father. Even when the courts divorce a loving father from their children, or in my case, our daughter, I was still her father until I can get her returned to her home and school, a tale I wrote about as a novel, Burning America in the Best Interest of the Children. Once she came back home, it was the most challenging but the most satisfying time in my life. In conclusion, that permanence, that irrevocable commitment, is exactly what the male psyche craves.
Mr. Mick, but is it not that also terrifying? This idea that you can't quit.
Well, of course, it's terrifying. That's exactly the point. Terror and meaning often go hand in hand. The modern world has tried to eliminate all forms of irrevocable commitment, but humans, especially men, need some things to be permanent. We need some commitments to be unbreakable, not because we're masochists, but because permanence creates a different kind of freedom. When a man becomes a father, he stops asking, "What do I want to do with my life?" and starts asking, "What kind of man do my children need me to be?" My mom has told me that my dad was 18 going on 36 when they got married. And there was nothing more reassuring than hearing my parents' first new car, a 1957 Buick Special, which meant that dad was home from work and it's time to eat. In conclusion, that shift from introspection to mission is psychologically transformative.
Okay, so fatherhood can be transformative for man, Mr. Mick, but you're not just talking about having kids. You're talking about having more kids. Why bigger families specifically is not one of those two kids enough? Why even go there?
It's a fair question. In a culture conditioned to believe that children are expensive, exhausting, and restrictive, suggesting more sounds insane because one child changes you, but multiple children change your entire social ecosystem. In a world where the community has collapsed, families need to become their communities. But here's the twist: the data consistently shows that larger families produce stronger, more resilient social ecosystems. Consider the Trinity in the Christian notion of God is one divine essence, substance, nature, existing eternally in three distinct persons: the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, i.e., a community. Adults who grew up with more siblings report lower loneliness, stronger social networks, and higher resilience in adulthood. There's a 2022 study from the Journal of Family Issues that tracked adults over 20 years and found that people with three or more siblings had significantly lower rates of depression and anxiety and higher levels of life satisfaction. Why? Because siblings function as lifelong support systems: emotional, financial, and practical. When your parents age, when you face a crisis, when you need someone who truly knows your history, siblings are irreplaceable. But it goes deeper than just practical benefits. Big families multiply joy: more birthdays, more milestones, more built in community, more opportunities for love to expand and complicate and deepen. I think about families I know with four, five, six kids. The house is chaotic, sure, but it's also alive in a way that smaller families or childless homes simply aren't. There's always something happening, always someone learning something new. In conclusion, always opportunities for siblings to reach out for each other, protect each other, and challenge each other.
But Mr. Mick, it doesn't that chaos become overwhelming?
Well, that's the beautiful paradox of bigger families. They're self regulating systems. In a family with two children, every conflict becomes a crisis. But in a family with four or five children, conflicts resolve themselves through the natural dynamics of group interaction. Children in larger families often report feeling more secure, not less. Why? Because their worth isn't tied to being the sole focus of their parents' attention. In conclusion, they learn early that love isn't a zero sum game.
Zero, zero indeed. So, what about environmental concerns? Is it having more children irresponsible given climate change?
The environmental argument against children is based on a fundamental misunderstanding. We're not facing overpopulation, we're facing demographic collapse. More developed countries have birth rates well below replacement level. Children aren't just consumers, they're innovators. Every environmental breakthrough has come through human ingenuity. More children mean more potential problem solvers. The environmental argument is fundamentally misanthropic. It treats humans as parasites rather than problem solvers. In conclusion, we need more children, but raised in families that teach responsibility and stewardship.
Zooming out, Mr. Mick, how does this fit into a bigger philosophical picture of what it means to be human?
It fits perfectly because this isn't just a psychological argument, it's metaphysical, it's existential. It touches on the deepest questions of human purpose. Augustine said, "The heart is restless until it rests in God." But the same is true in our horizontal relationships. We are designed for love, commitment, and being fruitful. Locke argued that our labor, what we pour ourselves into, becomes part of who we are. When you improve land, you don't just change the land, you invest part of yourself in it. Fatherhood is that labor, perhaps the deepest form of it. When you raise a child, you're not just changing them, you're investing your deepest self into their flourishing. Nietzsche warned that when the structures of meaning collapse, we descend into nihilism. The modern collapse of the family is exactly that collapse. We've torn down the traditional sources of meaning without replacing them with anything substantive. The result is what Nietzsche predicted: widespread nihilism disguised as self help. Men optimizing their bodies, their income, their status. But for what? Toward what end? The endless pursuit of self improvement becomes a sophisticated form of despair. But the ancient Christian thinkers, Gregory of Nyssa, Origen, and Augustine, all insisted that love is expansive by nature. Love doesn't diminish when it's shared, it multiplies. In conclusion, this isn't just spiritual poetry, it's observable reality.
How do you respond to people who say this sounds nice in theory, but it doesn't account for modern realities, Mr. Meg?
The objection reveals the problem rather than solving it. When we say modern realities, we mean that modern life has become hostile to human flourishing. Think about what we mean: jobs requiring 60-hour weeks, housing consuming 50% of income, social media fragmenting attention, and educational debt lasting into the 30s. These aren't natural laws, they're policy changes that can be changed, and these choices can be changed. The question isn't whether bigger families fit into modern life, it's whether modern life serves human flourishing. In conclusion, the evidence says it doesn't.
It doesn't. You've said something fascinating that modern masculinity got stuck. What do you mean by that, Mr. Mick?
The classical masculine arc had five stages. One, separate from the feminine, leave childhood, break away from maternal protection. Two, gain mastery, develop skills, strength, competence. Three, commit to a woman, to a family, to something larger than yourself. Four, father, generate life, mentor, protect, guide. Five, elder, pass on wisdom, become an ancestor. Today, we've frozen men at step two. Gain mastery, build your body, build your brand, build your income, build your status, build your game, but never commit, never father, never cross into fruitfulness. The entire manosphere, from pickup artists to Sigma male grindset content, is just capitalism's masculine self help manual. Consume, optimize, repeat. It's masculinity as product development. You're constantly working on yourself as if you're a startup that never launches. But that's not what masculinity is supposed to be. Masculinity is supposed to be generative. In conclusion, it's supposed to build things that last beyond the individual man's lifespan.
So, Mr. Mink, what happens when a man gets stuck at level 2?
They become what I call eternal adolescents. They have adult bodies, adult resources, adult capabilities, but adolescent mindsets. Everything is still about them, their pleasure, their optimization, their freedom. And the psychological toll is devastating because the male psyche is designed for progression through these stages. When you arrest development at stage 2, you create a kind of spiritual constipation. All this energy, competence, and drive with nowhere meaningful to channel it. That's why you see so many high achieving men who are miserable. They've mastered stage 2 completely. They're wealthy, fit, and successful, but they're psychologically stuck. They keep optimizing, but optimization without purpose becomes a form of sophisticated procrastination. The breakthrough comes when they realize that stage 3, commitment, isn't the end of their growth, it's the beginning of their real growth. In conclusion, commitment creates the container within which deeper masculinity can develop.
The beginning of real growth, indeed. Mr. Mink, can you give us a concrete example for this transformation?
I know a guy who is the poster child for modern masculine success: six-figure income, perfect physique, dating multiple women, constant travel, optimizing everything. But he was miserable. Despite having everything the culture promised would make him happy, he felt empty. Then he met a woman he respected and felt the pull toward commitment. It terrified him. He did it, got married, had kids. All that energy he'd been spending on self optimization suddenly had a meaningful target. Instead of optimizing for its own sake, he was building strength to protect his family, building wealth for people he loved more than himself. His life became harder, but infinitely more meaningful. He stopped asking, "What do I want?" and started asking, "What do they need from me?" In conclusion, that shift transformed everything.
But let's address the most common pushback heads on. Kids are too expensive. What do you say to that?
It's the most frequent and the weakest argument, but I understand why people believe it because it's based on a fundamental misunderstanding of what expensive means. Is raising children expensive? Sure, but expensive compared to what? Another luxury SUV? A third international vacation? The latest iPhone every year? A downtown apartment with high ceilings you'll never use? No one ever is ready or can afford children. Once you grasp that, you are free to produce children. You simply do the best you can and move on. Here's the thing: every generation before us managed to raise children with far fewer material resources. Your grandparents probably raised four kids on a single income in a smaller house with fewer conveniences, and they considered themselves fortunate. My farming grandparents had 13 and 17 children, respectively, and somehow they survived just fine. What changed isn't the actual cost of raising children. What changed is our definition of what children need. Today's parents think children need private schools or top tier public school districts, endless extracurricular activities and lessons, the latest technology and gadgets, individual bedrooms with perfect decor. College funds are fully funded by age 18. But historically, children needed food, shelter, and basic safety, love and attention from their parents, opportunities to contribute to the family, examples of adult responsibility and character, extended family and community connections. In conclusion, the expensive narrative is largely driven by what sociologists call competitive parenting, the idea that you have to give your children every possible advantage or you're failing them.
But Mr. Mick, is it not, or is it that just good parenting, wanting to give your kid the best opportunities?
There's a difference between giving children what they need to flourish and giving them every luxury you can afford. And sometimes, often, those two things are opposites. Children who get everything they want don't learn resilience, gratitude, or resourcefulness. Children who have to share rooms learn negotiation and compromise. Children who contribute to a household work learn competence and responsibility. Some of the most successful, well adjusted adults I know grew up in families where money was tight but love was abundant. They learned early that their worth wasn't tied to what they owned, but to what they contributed. There's economic research supporting this. A 2018 demography study found that families with more children develop more robust economic resilience over the long haul due to shared labor, mutual respect, and distributed caregiving. Bigger families are forced to be more efficient. They buy generic brands, share resources, and waste less. In conclusion, they develop what economists call household production, cooking at home, growing gardens, fixing things instead of replacing them.
Mr. Mick, you've said big families are form of cultural resistance. What do you mean?
Because every part of modern life pushes in the opposite direction towards isolation over community, toward consumption over generativity, toward temporary pleasure over lasting commitment, toward individual optimization over collective flourishing, toward algorithmic connection over embodied relationship. Big families are countercultural by design. There are micro societies where love scales up, where you don't outsource relationships to institutions or algorithms. You build thick, durable bonds across generations. Think about what a family dinner looks like in a house with five kids versus a house with one kid. In the big family, it's controlled chaos. Multiple conversations are happening simultaneously. Older kids helping younger ones, stories are being told and retold, conflicts arise and need to be resolved organically. It's messy and loud and unpredictable. Everything modern life tries to eliminate. In conclusion, but it's also alive in a way that's perfectly curated, Instagram ready experiences never are. It's an authentic human community in miniature.
Well, very well said indeed, Mr. Meg. Very well said. Let's do rapid fire responses to the most common objections people raise. Are you ready, Mr. Meg? I want freedom. Kids tie you down, for sure.
Freedom from what? From responsibility, from meaning, from the opportunity to love someone more than yourself? This is the great lie of modern individualism that freedom means having no obligations. Well, that's not freedom. That's just elaborate loneliness. Real freedom comes from choosing your constraints. When you commit to marriage and fatherhood, you're not losing freedom. You're gaining the freedom that comes from having a clear mission, a meaningful purpose, a reason to get out of bed that's bigger than your comfort. The men who brag about their freedom to travel anywhere, date anyone, do anything, listen to them closely. They're not describing freedom, they're describing anxiety. In conclusion, the anxiety of infinite choice with no guiding principle for making choices.
What if I'm not ready? What if I mess up my kids?
Nobody's ever ready. That's the point. Readiness is a myth that keeps people perpetually preparing for a life they never actually live. Your parents weren't ready. Your grandparents weren't ready. Nobody in the history of humanity has ever felt completely prepared to raise children. You learn by doing, with love and commitment as your guides. And yes, you'll mess up. Every parent messes up, but children are remarkably resilient, especially when they know they're loved. The perfectionism that keeps people from having children is often more damaging than the imperfection they're trying to avoid. Your kids don't need perfect parents, they need present parents. In conclusion, they need parents who are committed to their flourishing and willing to grow alongside them.
How about My career. Having kids will hurt my professional advancement, Mr. Mac.
This is where we need to ask deeper questions about what professional advancement is. Is it an end in itself, or is it means to something greater? Most people climbing the career ladder discover that the ladder is leaning against the wrong wall. They achieve professional success but feel spiritually empty because their work isn't connected to anything transcendent. Fatherhood doesn't end your career, it gives your career purpose. Instead of working for abstract success, you're working to provide for people you love. Instead of competing for ego gratification, you're building something that will outlast you. In conclusion, some of the most successful, most fulfilled men I know are fathers who see their work as service to their families rather than just personal achievement.
Let's bring this home. What's the ultimate message here about how men should think about their lives?
The great lie of modernity is that the good life is a lifestyle. Travel, consumption, endless experiences, personal optimization, individual freedom. But the truth every ancient tradition knows is that the good life is a legacy. It's about love that extends beyond yourself, commitment that outlasts your lifespan, generativity that creates something larger than what you could accomplish alone. The lifestyle approach treats life like a consumption experience. You're always asking, what can I get out of this? The legacy approach treats life like a creative project. You're asking, what can I build through this? Fatherhood isn't a lifestyle accessory. It's the telos of manhood, the end towards which masculine development naturally tends. It's not something you add if the conditions are right. In conclusion, it's the very thing that makes conditions right.
What does this look like practically? Or practically, Mr. Mick, how should a man who's convinced by this argument live differently?
First, stop optimizing for optionality. Stop keeping your options open just for the sake of keeping them open. Start making irrevocable commitments that give your life direction and meaning. Second, reframe marriage and fatherhood not as restrictions on your freedom, but as the context within which your deepest potential can be actualized. Third, start thinking generationally. Ask yourself, what am I building that will outlast my own life? What am I passing on? What legacy am I creating? Fourth, get comfortable with the idea that your life is not primarily about you. It's about your service to something larger, your family, your community, your tradition, your descendants. This doesn't mean becoming a doormat or sacrificing your individuality. In conclusion, it means finding your individuality through your service to others rather than despite them.
Individuality, indeed. That's so bottom line. What is the message to men listening right now, Mr. Mac?
The message is this: you've been told to look inward. The algorithm told you happiness is about you, your freedom, your grind, your optimization, your brand, your lifestyle. But the truth is the exact opposite. Look outward, commit, love expansively, build something that lasts. Men should find a lady to love and bear children with. The culture has convinced you that commitment is a trap, that children are burdens, that your highest calling is your happiness. But look around. How's that working out? Are the men following that script happy? Are they fulfilled? Are they building anything meaningful? The data says no. The loneliness epidemic says no. The depression rates say no. The suicide statistics say no. Here's what I want you to consider. What if everything you've been told about the good life is backwards? That freedom isn't about having no obligations, but about choosing the right obligations. What if success isn't about optimizing yourself, but about serving something larger than yourself? What if the path to meaning isn't through more options, but through deeper commitments? You don't have to have 5 kids tomorrow. You don't have to completely spend your life overnight, but you can start moving in the direction of fruitfulness rather than optimization. You can start asking different questions. Instead of, what do I want? Ask, what does the world need from me? Instead of, how can I improve myself? Ask, how can I serve something larger than myself? Instead of, what will make me happy? Ask, what will make my life meaningful? The answers to those questions will lead you toward commitment, toward marriage, toward fatherhood, toward building something that outlasts your existence. In conclusion, in a world obsessed with shrinking connections, the most radical thing you can do is to build something that grows.
Mr. Make any practical first steps for men who are convinced but don't know where to start.
Start where you are. If you're single, start dating with marriage as the goal, not just entertainment. Look for a woman you genuinely respect and could see as the mother of your children. If you're in a relationship, have the marriage conversation. Stop drifting and start moving toward commitment. If you're married with children but childless, start the family conversation. Don't wait for perfect conditions, they don't exist. If you have one child, consider whether your family feels complete or whether there's room for more love to expand. And regardless of your situation, start thinking generationally. Start asking, what am I building that will outlast me? How am I preparing the next generation? What legacy am I creating? The future belongs to those who show up for it. In conclusion, showing up means having more children, raising them well, and creating families that can weather whatever storms come.
Definitely. Final thought, Mr. Mick. What do you want people to remember most from this conversation?
I want them to remember that the path of meaning runs through other people, not around them. The culture will tell you that happiness comes from maximizing your freedom, but the deepest happiness comes from freely choosing to limit your freedom in service of love. Your life is not primarily about you, it's about what you can build, whom you can serve, and what you can leave behind. In a world obsessed with taking, the most radical thing you can do is give. In a world obsessed with consuming, the most radical thing you can do is create. In a world obsessed with the self, the most radical thing you can do is transcend the self through love. That's what fatherhood offers. That's what big families create. That's what legacy looks like. And that's about it for today's episode. This has been one of the most challenging and hopefully transformative conversations. If this sparks something in you, whether conviction or questions, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Hope you subscribe to the podcast and join in the conversation and connection and comment. We read every single one. Until next time, remember the future belongs to those who show up for it. In conclusion, build something that grows.
Build something for your legacy, Mr. Mank. Very well said. Yes, people, fatherhood offers a profound path to purpose and grounding. The responsibility of raising children, nurturing, guiding, and providing stability can anchor men in meaningful commitment, countering feeling of disconnection. Mr. Mink, would you like to plug in something?
Sure. Thanks for the opportunity. On LinkedIn, you can create a valued book in 90 days. Connect with me there. Also, make sure you get the idea to author coach on Facebook, also on Substack, other places as well. Listen to the Doctor of Digital podcast and pick up a couple volumes I have on Amazon, Burning America and On Track Ian Hunter.
Yes, indeed. People, please do listen to our baby podcast. Baby podcast, Mental Health 101, because Mental Health 101 is created to empower mental health awareness. So, Mr. Mink, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, my friend. Until next time, Deus Volt.
More to come, people. See you soon.